Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1995 action-adventure film Congo, where you are the endangered species. Now, Congo to me is a legitimate gem. I think this is a diamond in the rough. I know it's considered to be some infamously terrible, bad movie, but I've always had a soft spot for this film ever since I first saw it when I was a teenager on VHS. I went to the local thrift store near my house, and the VHS was there, and it was super cheap. I just looked at the back of the cover, and I was like, oh, this looks like it might be interesting. And the cover art grabbed me, and it mentioned Jurassic Park, which I'm a huge fan of. So I was like, sure, I'll give this a watch. I'll give this a shot. And I watched it, and I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed the movie. And over the years, I've seen it numerous times, and I still enjoy it quite a bit. Yeah, it does have some pitfalls to prevent it from being truly great, but for what it is, it's still really good and a hell of a lot better than its reputation suggests. Now, Congo was directed by Frank Marshall, who I feel did a fantastic job with this movie. It's a very effects-driven film, and I feel that Frank really managed to handle all these different effects in a way that was really effective. It really came across as even photorealistic at times in terms of the performers in the gorilla suits, and the various other effects work, like the city of Zinj when it's crumbling and falling apart in the climax, combined with the lava flow and the earthquakes and everything. That whole scene was absolutely spectacular in terms of the way that it was shot by Frank Marshall. It really did look like the ground was caving in, and these actors were running for their lives and trying to stay one step ahead of a deadly lava flow. And that wasn't the only sequence involving action that was really well shot. The ambush at not really the end of the film, but near the end of the movie, at the camp where the great gorillas ambush everybody, that was really well shot. I like the idea of having the lasers, the blue lasers, light up the environment. And the sequence where they're on the river and they encounter hippos in a very tense and genuinely terrifying sequence at night. Yeah, overall, it's a really well-directed film. Frank Marshall captures the setting of the jungle really well and showcases it in a way that's absolutely beautiful. And not only just the jungle, but every other facet of Africa. It's a really gorgeous-looking film when it comes to these sequences that take place in Africa and showcasing these other animals in their native environment. And I think he did a great job capturing the tone of the movie, the spirit of the film, the spirit of adventure, because this film is a throwback. Roger Ebert, who was one of the few critics at the time who liked the film and actually gave it a positive review, he understood what they were trying to go for. It's a throwback to an old jungle adventure movie from like the 30s or 40s. It's not intended to be taken seriously. It's intended to be as over the top as it possibly can be. And I like that about the film. I think it really adds to the fun of the movie, where you can have scenes where Delroy Lindo will be yelling at Tim Curry to stop eating his sesame cake. Like, you can have that in the movie, and it fits within the tone of the film. I think that was the right move to make this a throwback to those kind of films, like King Solomon's Mines and so on, but then have a bit of an edge and an extra bite to it, and update the technology. So it's very much in spirit a throwback film, but with some, at the time, modern influences. And I felt that Frank Marshall really got some really solid performances out of his cast. It definitely seemed like he was having a lot of fun shooting the movie, and it really did seem like he was putting so much into it. So, yeah, I've always thought that Frank Marshall did a great job with this, and I think he deserves more credit, especially considering how difficult it really is to pull off all these different kinds of effects and to do a lot of this live. A lot of the stuff that was shot for the film was done live. It wasn't done in post. It wasn't done behind a green screen. It was done live on the set or in an actual jungle. So these are all things that I think are a little bit more difficult to pull off than some people might initially think. The screenplay by John Patrick Shanley, based on Michael Crichton's novel, I don't mind the script. I know people have an issue with it because they don't like the tone. They criticize the film for being too unrealistic. And I don't get it, because this is a film about essentially a talking gorilla. A gorilla that can talk with the help of technology, who also likes to drink vodka martinis. You have to take this with a tongue-in-cheek approach. You have to be campy and over the top, otherwise it's not going to work. You can't be realistic with this. I don't think that approach would have served the film well in any capacity, even if the source material was more serious. At the end of the day, you still have a talking gorilla, and that's a very over-the-top concept. So, in order to balance things out, it makes more sense to make things more over the top, with lines of dialogue and crazy instances of action and just in pure craziness. And just a really over-the-top, fun adventure with elements of horror, which I thought was really surprising. And that's one aspect of the film that I think could have been fleshed out a little bit more, could have had more of those sequences that get rather hairy and get rather tense and genuinely bloody. Like, I would have liked to have seen more scenes with the Greys, to be honest. They are very mysterious initially. You have an attack like within the first 10 minutes, but you don't really see who's attacking. You don't really figure out that it might be a gorilla until pretty much over an hour into the movie, or at least around an hour. And you don't really get the Greys until the climax, which I understand you're saving the best for last, so to speak. But I feel that the Greys were not really able to live up to their full potential because they weren't in the film as much as I think they should have been. I think you could have had another attack at some point earlier on. Maybe have the other team that was supposed to rescue the diamond and look for one of the Travis Comm employees. Maybe that rescue team doesn't necessarily crash land and everyone dies in the crash. Maybe some of them live and they get hunted down and taken out by the Greys, the Grey Apes. That would have helped in terms of like giving these apes more to do, because it just feels like the Grey Gorillas just weren't in it as much as they should have been. And I also feel that it definitely does cross as many lines as it possibly can for a PG-13 rating, to the point where it's genuinely surprising. I mean, you have bloody corpses, people who are all torn up and bleeding and dead. You've got apes that get completely cut in half with lasers, and you see the blood, and you see what looks like entrails. Bruce Campbell's character gets an eyeball thrown at him, and it is exactly what it appears to be. It's a practical effect, and it's an actual eyeball with a bloody retina and everything, and it's one of those things you're like, whoa, like, holy shit. And there's a character who says the F-bomb, and it definitely does not feel like your average PG-13 film. Like, there is some genuine visceralness to it, and I just would have liked to have seen it go even further. I mean, you already had the point where a gray gorilla is rolling somebody's severed head like it's a bowling ball. I mean, I think this could have been even more effective if it was R-rated. And maybe that's not necessarily something that falls at the screenwriter's feet. That's the producers and the studio and so on. But this being R-rated and just having more gore and more craziness with these gray gorillas just tearing people up and the lasers just cutting them to shreds and them getting shot and having even more blood squibs, like, that could have been absolutely awesome. But as it is, still pretty intense and violent despite the PG-13 rating. And I like the stuff with Amy, the talking gorilla. I know a lot of people don't like it. I like that. I like Amy. I think the personality that the writer gives to this gorilla is rather charming and cute, and I liked it. And I thought the writing that he had involving Amy and her trainer and her friend, Peter, I thought that was very sweet. And I like stuff that involves Joe Pantoliano's character sort of chewing the scenery a little bit in his scenes, or Tim Curry just eating sesame cake and just chewing up every scene that he's in as well. I like that stuff. I don't really have a problem with it not taking itself as seriously. It's a movie about a talking gorilla and ancient gray gorillas that were trained by what seems like Egyptians. Like, you don't really need to be that serious with it. It makes sense to just go all out and just be over the top, and I think that just adds to the fun of the movie and the fun of the story. I mean, you got sequences involving the main characters who are in a plane, and they're getting shot at with rocket launchers, and they're breaking out flares and firing them into the air to provide countermeasures. You've got late night hippo attacks. You've got all kinds of stuff. You got sequence in the end where they find the lost city of Zinj, and it's a practical set, and it looks great, and they get involved in a conflict with these badass gray gorillas, and then you have fucking lasers. You have lasers. Laura Linney's character gets a goddamn laser and just starts cutting these apes to pieces and lighting them on fire. And then it just gets even more crazy because now there's a volcanic eruption. The whole city of Zinj is falling down and falling around their feet, and they have to escape. And then there's a lava flow, and it's insane. But it's a blast. It really is. I would say when it comes to the script, the one element that I feel wasn't the best, other than the fact that it didn't have as much involving the gray gorillas as I personally would have liked. The stuff with Travis, with Travicom, and the boss of the company. I didn't feel that was handled that well. Yeah, RB Travis, Travicom CEO, the whole stuff involving him and Karen, who works for him. I just felt that that character was written in a way where it was too over the top, even for this over the top movie. But one character that I did feel was handled really well was Captain Monroe Kelly. I really liked that character. I liked the fact that the script gave him a lot to do, where he was genuinely kind of a badass in his own right, and he was very cheeky, and had his own charm that was brought to the role. Not only just due to Ernie Hudson and his performance, but in a lot of ways due to the script and what the screenwriter provided him with. And yeah, I think all the different members of the expedition team, they all work together well. Even Homolka, the Tim Curry's character, I like the fact that he is portrayed as, in a lot of ways, a selfish asshole, but not in a way where he's obnoxious and irritating and completely unlikable. Like, you still like this guy. You kind of feel a little bad when he gets torn to shreds by these gray gorillas. All he wanted was a few diamonds, and the man went through all kinds of hell in the past, and definitely in that moment, to just get a few diamonds. I mean, what are these gorillas going to do with these diamonds anyway? So you did kind of feel a little bit bad for him. And I think that's due to the fact that the writers did a good job making you like this character, despite the fact that he's written clearly to be some kind of villain, but not in a way where you hate the guy's guts or you are just waiting for him to get killed. No, you kind of want him to make it out, because the character is written in a way where, yeah, he's not necessarily the most trustworthy guy, and he's definitely a schmuck, but he's a likable schmuck. And I also like the fact that with Karen and Peter, they don't do this typical thing where they become a love interest. They kind of hint at it, but it's never really fully realized at the end of the movie. I like that. That makes it stand out a little bit. They don't have the moment where they kiss and they live happily ever after. I also like the fact that Amy does go back to the jungle with other gorillas, and they don't do the whole thing where she decides to stay where she really doesn't belong. That moment, though, that's another thing I will kind of criticize the screenwriter for. I don't think that was as strong of an emotional scene as it could have been. I think there should have been like one last moment with Peter and Amy where he says goodbye to her. He was just standing away, and he was looking for her, and then he saw that she was gonna go with the other gorillas, and you didn't have that last moment where he like hugs her, or it just felt like there was something missing there. But I still feel it was relatively well written in that regard. So yeah, I think the script, despite a few pitfalls, mainly involving some characters like Travis, Ross, the boss of Travicom, and the fact that you don't really have as much involving the gray gorillas as I think you should have had, and a few other things here and there, I think the script is pretty good. It's a lot better than people give it credit for. That's for sure. And I like the cast. I think the cast is really solid. Laura Linney is Karen Ross. I really like her character. I like her performance. I like the fact that she decides to blow up her boss's satellite at the end because she stood by her word. She said he would pay if the whole mission was just to get a diamond for his damn satellite. I like that. she definitely knows how to stand her own and does it in a way where you don't need to prop her up on a pedestal over other people. She finds her own way to navigate around things and find her own path. And there are some moments in this film where she's genuinely really cool and kicks a lot of ass. When she gets that laser and just starts absolutely mowing through these apes, that's a really great crowd pleasing moment. And it's one of those like, you go girl, kick that ape's ass, kick some ass. Like, it's one of those crowd pleasing moments. Dylan Walsh, I also really enjoyed as Peter Elliott. He did not lose the sense of fun that this whole film was. He really did bring an almost, not necessarily childlike enthusiasm, but he did bring a lot of exuberance to the role, and he knew when to take things a little more seriously in some more dramatic moments, but he also knew when to let loose. Like when they get woken up by all these monkeys in the middle of the night that are just making a racket. And Ernie Hudson's character, Kelly, explains that, you know, every monkey thinks that they're Elvis because it's the full moon. So he just starts making monkey noises at Laura Linney's character. And it was fun. And he had a lot of those moments where he wasn't afraid to be silly. And I think that really did help the tone of the film land. Ernie Hudson, he did a great job. This is actually his favorite film role. And you can honestly see why, because he gets a lot to do. He gets a pretty meaty role. He gets to kick some ass. And he plays the great white hunter, who also happens to be black. I thought he had some great chemistry with the other cast members. I really liked his performance as Kelly. The only negative that I did see with his performance is an inconsistent British accent that came and went. I don't think he needed to do that. I think he honestly could have just spoken normally. Didn't need the British accent. But other than that, great performance, and definitely one of my favorite performances from Ernie Hudson. Tim Curry, yeah, he's chewing up the scenery, but Tim Curry does it better than almost anyone. He's so much fun to watch as Homolka, this Romanian man who offers to finance the expedition, but he doesn't really have that much money. He's a liar, and he just wants to find this lost city of Zinj, where he was essentially lost and then found years before, because he found the city and then something happened and then he was never able to go back to it. He was never able to find it again. Everyone thought he was crazy for saying the city exists. And also he wants to get rich, and who doesn't want to get rich, to be perfectly honest? Which is why I was kind of bummed that they threw the diamond away at the end. It's like, you went through all of this, you went through hell, you deserve the diamond. You deserve the ability to just do whatever you want. Like, that diamond, you could sell that diamond and you would be set for life. And no, you threw the diamond away. But yeah, Tim Curry is great. And in my opinion, Delroy Lindo should just let him eat that sesame cake. I mean, Delroy Lindo's character even told him to eat it in the first place. But yeah, Tim Curry was a lot of fun. Grant Heslov, he was decent as Peter. I liked the chemistry he had with Dylan Walsh, as well as with the suit performer who played Amy. And his death was probably arguably the most tragic, because I mean, man, that was a really rough way for him to die. Joe Don Baker, the worst performance in the movie, hands down. He's just shouting. He's at 100% every scene, his scenes were exhausting to watch. Just always yelling at the top of his lungs and, did you get the diamond? Like, it's like, Jesus Christ, man. Take a goddamn chill pill. I get it. He's supposed to be a villain. He's supposed to be a son of a bitch. But, like, you could have had a little bit more of a nuance there. And I know Joe Don Baker is very capable of that. But this performance was awful. Easily his worst, because he's just shouting all the time. And there's no layers whatsoever to the performance. Bruce Campbell, he was fine as Charles. I know initially he auditioned to play Dylan Walsh's character, but I don't think he would have been the right choice either. I know some people say they would have liked the film more if Bruce Campbell played Peter, but I don't think Bruce Campbell would really pull off the believable scientist role as well as Dylan Walsh did. And no offense to Bruce Campbell, that's just not the kind of actor he is. And it would have come across as miscasting to me. I just wouldn't have really bought it. So he was fine though in the little scenes that he did have. Joe Pantoliano was a lot of fun. An uncredited cameo role was Eddie Ventro, this American living in Africa who hires Monroe and then organizes the transportation and materials. He's only in it for a little bit, but he makes the best out of every scene that he's in. I really had a lot of fun with his performance. And you also have some other actors who you might recognize, like Mary Ellen Trainor's in a little scene. Stuart Pankin. Yeah, James Karen, who was in Poltergeist. He plays the president of a college. Peter Jason plays Mr. Janus. You also have a cameo by Jimmy Buffett, of all people, who plays one of the pilots of one of the airplanes that expedition team uses in the film. So yeah, overall it's a pretty good cast, and I want to give credit to the suit performers as well, who did all the suit work in the gorilla suits that were designed by Stan Winston and company. Speaking of Stan Winston, I want to give him a lot of credit. He was really excited to do this film because in the makeup effects industry at this time, there's a lot of competition going on between the fellow artists in the industry. And Rick Baker was known as the King of the Apes. You know, he did King Kong in 1976 and even played King Kong. He did Greystoke. He did Gorillas of the Mist. And he became really well known for being an absolutely amazing effects artist when it comes to creating very lifelike apes and gorillas. Well, Stan Winston, he was a competitive guy, and he and Rick were friends, but they were always competing with one another, and he wanted to show that he could do apes just as well as the King of the Apes, Rick Baker. And I think he definitely did prove that he could do it, because the Amy ape suits and the other gorilla suits, I thought they were really well done. He does mention that he feels the grays were underused, and he's absolutely 100% correct on that. And it is a shame that a lot of the work that went into the gray gorillas from these different artists in terms of creating different sculpts and different designs and looks for these various different gray gorillas that differentiates them from one another and makes them unique, none of that really shows up on screen because of the way that things were shot and the way that things were lit. And that's very unfortunate, and I think that's really too bad. But what you do have on the screen is still really good. Some great practical makeup effects and suit work by Stan Winston and company. And not just Stan Winston's effects work. The other visual effects are just state-of-the-art. The stuff involving the lava flow and the city of Zinj collapsing and the earthquake and the ground moving at the end. Just really top-notch, terrific stuff that I've seen people say, even at the time, it was corny or it was cheesy or what. I don't know what the hell they're talking about, because the effects during that climax, to me, are some of the best visual effects of this era. Honestly, the way that it blended in miniatures and other practical stunts and other stuff that was going on the set, just really quite impressive, even to this day, especially so in high definition. Like there are some jaw-dropping moments where you're like, wow, that looks like a real lava, and that looks like they're actually there, but it was done a lot with a blue screen. But yeah, great effects work from Stan Winston and the other visual effects artists. Cinematography is well done by Alan Davio. Really does show when it comes to the sequences in the jungle and in Africa, and when they're trying to showcase the inherent beauty of the city of Zinj, or the gorillas in their native habitat. The editing I thought was excellent by Ann V. Coates. Really added a lot of extra bite and just visceralness and a nice punch to the sequences where the gray gorillas were attacking, or other action sequences, or other moments of tension like the hippo attack, which, by the way, the hippos were also done with practical effects by Stan Winston, and those effects are so great that I didn't even know that it was a practical effect. I thought for years those were real hippos, but no, those were makeup effects. And the music, I cannot sing enough praises for Jerry Goldsmith and his score for this movie. This score is spectacular, even if you don't like this film, because I know a lot of people don't like this movie. It's not their cup of tea. That's fine. Even if you don't like the film, I think you can at least appreciate Jerry Goldsmith's score for this movie. It fits the film really well. It's like a second skin, and it's just so adventurous and fun and epic and grand in its size and scope. And you have the bit in the beginning with the choir who are singing about Africa, which that whole bit is then incorporated instrumentally into the rest of the film for the movie's main theme. Apparently James Newton Howard did that, so I want to give him credit for that, because initially he was a composer, but then something happened and he wasn't able to keep on doing the project, so that they brought Jerry Goldsmith in, who initially was the one attached to the film when it was going to be done in the 80s. Because John Carpenter, of all people, was actually attached to a Congo film at one point. And as much as I love this movie, I really would have loved to have seen what that collaboration would have been. What that kind of film would have been like in like the late 80s or early 90s. A John Carpenter action-adventure movie. That could have been really special. But something happened and just wasn't able to be a possibility for the studio or for John Carpenter. But yeah, great score by Jerry Goldsmith, my favorite composer. May he rest in peace. It was such an amazing artist when it comes to just creating these just absolutely just stupendous compositions and scores that just elevated his films to a higher level. I don't think this film would be as much fun or be as adventurous as it is without Goldsmith's score. It really doesn't mean that much to the film. And it's got a running time of like 108 minutes, and to me it goes by pretty briskly. I don't think it really has a lot of moments where it slows down too much. There's a scene or two where you could cut it a little bit. Maybe this could have been a little bit more lean. Like maybe cut like 5 or 10 minutes, but there's nothing that really affects the overall flow of the film that immensely. It still goes by at a good pace, still has a good setup in terms of one set piece after another, with enough breathing room in between to the point where things don't get bogged down or get to the point where it doesn't have as much effectiveness. Because I've seen that before in other movies like this, where they're just at this non-stop pace and just throwing one thing at you after another. And then after a certain point, like, you need a breather or two in order to really make those other sequences feel more effective. You need to build up to something, not just constantly have everything at the same pace. And the $50 million budget the film has is used to the hilt. Like, all of this money is on the screen, and it's just a wonder and a sight to behold. And I can see why this was a hit. It made money. It did fairly well for the studio. And I could see why audiences at the time had fun with it. And no, it's not a guilty pleasure for me either. I don't feel guilty at all for genuinely liking Congo for what it is. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of Congo. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.